Ben, the Lions have announced their coaching staff.
Who are they, mate? Who have they gone with?
Well, they haven't actually given us names. They haven't given us what they're doing, have they?
Not yet, but we'll talk about it, Coley, and we'll try and figure it out.
Anyway, the coaches are England's senior coach, Richard Wigglesworth, Simon Easterby, John Dalziel, Andrew Goodman, and John Fogarty.
What's your initial thoughts, Coley?
My initial thoughts are it's an interesting group. Obviously, it's a big, heavy Irish contingent, but it's good to see Wigglesworth from England in the mix, and also DL of Scotland. I don't know a great deal about DL, but I did some bit of research earlier on with my two Scottish international teammates, and they said he's a great forwards coach, very well known at the line out, and he sort of come through the Scottish pathway from under 27s and all the way up. So yeah, it's a well, it's an interesting group. It's obviously a heavy Irish contingent, but yeah, it's good for Wiggy and DL to be on there.
My thoughts are, Coley, it makes sense. Andy Farrell's always going to pick a bit more of an Irish heavy coaching staff because that's who he's familiar with. He hasn't got to fast track them in terms of how he likes to play and his philosophies and everything like that. I think Simon Easterby has obviously been very important to Andy Farrell over the years. He slots in. I don't know much about John Dalziel either, Coley, to be honest with you. I want to call him John Denzel. I don't know why. Just do. Feels better. Like it, prefer it. Andrew Goodman, of course, was with Leinster for a long time, only joined Ireland recently. He is an attack coach. And then, of course, Richard Wigglesworth, of course, is an attack coach as well for England. So, interesting to see how that looks. I reckon Andrew Goodman will be the attack coach, and Richard Wigglesworth will probably do like kicking strategies, exit plan, and everything like that, and around the kicking game. That's what I reckon would happen potentially. I'm a bit gutted about one person, to be honest with you, that's not there, and that is the great Neil Jenkins. To be honest with you, maybe he's coming in a bit later, but I'm gutted. Neil Jenkins, legend, running on with the tea, running on with his water bottle, getting his knee drained because he's got such bad knees that they basically swell up straight after game, getting them drained by the doctor. I'm hoping that he's a late addition.
I don't want to say anything, but maybe there might not be enough players that can understand his thick Welsh accent on the tour, so he might not be selected for that reason. True. But yeah, no, he is a Lions legend, and yeah, there's always a place. I say he's one of the great blokes in rugby, and I remember playing international rugby. I'd be running around the pitch warming up when I'm on the bench for England, and it'd be like he'd just like look at you, wink, and you'd shake his hand, and it's like probably the only person in world rugby whose hand I would shake in the middle of a test match. But yeah, he's a great guy. He's
an absolute gent and a champion. That was the only one I was a bit gutted, but I think there's still time for Jenks. But I feel like Richard Wigglesworth could be in there as that kicking strategy person, of course. Then, like, obviously, Paul O'Connell, of course, he's going to be doing Ireland and looking after them in the summer. No Gregor Townsend. He, of course, was an option as the attack coach, but I think given Scotland's maybe campaign and everything like that, committed to obviously helping them and can't necessarily leave the role. Steve Tandy did it previous for the last Lions tour, of course, defence coach, and no Adam Jones either. So, yeah, I think it's one of those. I think Andy Farrell would have had a clear idea about who he wants anyway, well in advance. I think the Six Nations wouldn't have had a huge impact in terms of who he could or should or wouldn't take. I think it's more some of the cases, are they available and can they do it? And that's what he's gone with.
As a player going on that tour, you want a united staff that sings from the same page, which obviously Farrell knows and has picked the guys he's worked with, and is obviously a strong coaching staff because Ireland have been a great team for several years. But I do think it's important that you do have representatives from other countries, and Wigglesworth going in there, he knows the English lads, he'll help back their cause. It gives them the English lads, someone to sort of not talk to on the coaching staff, but make that coaching staff probably more approachable, similar with DL of Scotland. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that the Lions coaches do have a blend of nationalities or national coaches in there. And I think, some of the bigger names, obviously Gregor Townsend, Steve Tandy, those blokes, they have done it previously, and you never know. You don't know their availability from the union, all that kind of stuff. But it's, I do think it's good for, say, coaches like Wigglesworth to be exposed to that. I know he's a senior England coach, but exposed to that environment. Now he knows Farrell from coaching him at Sarries, but it's good for those guys individually, and also probably good for England that you've got a man in that. Well, good for England and Scotland that you've got sort of blokes getting to know that sort of Irish coaching staff, how they do the business, and what they can learn for the national teams. It's not them saying that you want them to spy on the opposition, but you know what I mean. If you're going into World Cup, it's good to know those players and that environment, and it'll be it's good for those individual coaches and good for the unions. It's good for, I think, national teams to have their coaches involved in Lions.
Well, Coley, there's no doubt that when we went on Lions tour, you learnt off players. You saw how they did things differently. You saw, with certain individual players, what made them so good. Why did they train at a certain level? What allowed them to do that? And you pick up all these little things. And it'll be exactly the same for the coaching staff. There will be bits that they maybe haven't seen before. Different set of eyes of how they see the game, or, for Wigglesworth, for instance, perhaps, there's an element where he picks up bits from Goodman's in terms of his attacking philosophy and everything like that. He might pick up bits as well. Simon Easterby, of course, has done defence for Ireland for a long time. When you speak to defence coach, actually gives you information or let you see it differently as well from attack point of view as well. So they'll all be learning off each other, just as we did as players, mate, when we were out there, like with, your Brian O'Driscolls, your Paul O'Connell in 2013 and the guys like that. You just sort of saw what made them such special players and the way that they went about it. You all sort of learn, and you're all committed to driving the team forward, being successful, and almost like a sponge of knowledge for that group. You are literally with the cream of the crop in terms of player-wise. So, yeah, I think it's great that they've got representation for all the unions. I thought Jenks might be in there from a Welsh perspective. Maybe he might still get in there. You'd love to see it. But yeah, and from a player's point of view as well, Coley, like we obviously had it in, I think of 2013, Andy Farrell was the defence coach who went on the Lions tour, and of course Graham Roundtree was the scrum coach. So having an English representation for you as a player, makes it a little bit easier in terms of having a point of contact to go to coaching staff, because obviously we had Gatlin and Howley and guys like that. So actually having someone like a Farrell when he was with England and did the Lions, it's, you've got someone there where you're familiar with that you can chat to and get an understanding of like where you're at and what you need to do, etc.
Yeah, so let's have a bit of a deep dive on Richard Wigglesworth, who was sort of not a late addition, but he's been the sort of big name in the past couple of days coming out of the media that sort of was linked with the job. We obviously know him well. You've played against him, played with him in England squads and coached with him at Leicester. What, in your opinion, makes Wiggy the coach that he is?
He's demanding. I think he gives a lot of clarity and very clear. But by giving clear, precise clarity in terms of what he likes to do and how he coaches it, he then has demand on it. So you certainly, when I think of Wiggy in terms of the bits that he's coached me at previous and some of the kick strategy stuff, which I believe is what he'll be doing with the Lions. I don't actually know because, like you say, Colin, they haven't actually put titles with each person, but I'm assuming that's what he'll be doing, is he will make sure the team is set up very, very clear. Everyone knows their roles in terms of, like 3 in the 15s, for instance. And what I mean by that for the listeners is, whenever you do a box kick, for instance, you want 3 people down that channel so that they can't come back down there and everything like that. So as the box kick comes up, you've got 3 chases, there's no threat in terms of getting exposed. So he'll make sure there's clarity about everyone knows their roles, where to be, what the ruck needs to be like, where the kick needs to go, what the chase needs to be like, how to put pressure and everything like that, and sort of build a game plan like that. So he's demanding within that and very clear about that. He's also quite... he likes to have... sort of do his messaging through a different way, doesn't he, Coley? So it won't just be a meeting in terms of this is what they do, this is what we're going to do, here we go, look at some clips. He loves to sort of make the meetings very sort of engaging and bouncing from one thing to the other and try and get everyone sort of involved, have some humour in it, have a laugh, and he does it through various ways. So yeah, I think Wiggy is a guy that's still very young in his coaching career, really, but having been a great 9 and having played scrum half for so long, you're essentially a coach throughout your career the whole time anyway. It's just, the fact that since he's retired, he's obviously had the whistle around his neck and the hat on and blowing it. But, when you're a 9 and you do all that, you're always talking about the tack, you're always talking about kick strategy, you're always talking about getting the team ready and all those pieces. So for him, he's still relatively young in his coaching career. but I think he's got a very, very bright future as a coach, and I think this will be a perfect opportunity for him to go and learn even more, and be a better coach on the back of it.
You say Wigglesworth's quite young in his coaching career. The tail end of his playing career, which went on for a while, but he actually coached Canada at the World Cup. I think he was Ealing's attack coach in the Championship while still playing in the Premiership. So he's actually done a lot of the sort of hard yards while he was still playing. So when he did retire, he sort of player coach at Leicester for a sort of season and a half, and then when Steve left, he ended up sort of being head coach. So yeah, he's had a sort of the trajectory's pretty much taken off since he's finished, but going in with the England setup, he's sort of gone from being England's attack coach to England's senior coach, which basically I think is he's second in command. I think Steve Borthwick is helping him, channeling him into sort of being a head coach of, he's been a head coach Leicester, but like probably a head coach in terms of whether it's England or a club, whatever it is, he's probably properly growing his role in that team. So, he's had a pretty... what's the word? Not mesmeric. Well, it's mesmeric rise from when he's finished to where he is now, especially coaching the Lions. But I think he's coached for actually a long period of time and longer than people know about. I think he has credit to him the fact that he committed himself to it and he's passionate about what he does. And as you say, he's a very personable guy, and I think that comes across in meetings. I'm sure he will connect with all the players on that tour, and he's a very good coach, very detailed on what he does. It'll be interesting how he blends in with that island. Obviously knows Farrell from sort of being coach at Sarries, but what he sort of gleans from the Irish, and because they're a lot more, not say structured in their attack, but they're attacking different styles, and it'd be interesting how that all blends together. Yeah,
I think the other thing as well, Collie, as you just alluded to there briefly, was he likes to have a good time, Wiggy, and like the Lions is about bringing a group together, and you've got a short time to bring all these best players from all the nations to come together and perform, and he will be very good at sort of bringing that team together very quickly in terms of being able to connect to the team, being able to bring the team together, and sort of his mannerisms and how he does that. Alan Walters, of course, is another one who's going, who's the like sort of high performance, and he's fantastic at it, like, honestly.
What I would say, if there's any players who think they're having a sniff for the Lions, whether they've been sent out contracts, whatever it is, but like you think you're in the wire squad, you played in the Six Nations, you played well, I'd probably go through all your social media channels and go back several years to the very start and delete anything that can be used against you, because Richard Wigglesworth will find it.
He is fantastic at getting material on lads and finding old stuff. It's actually one of his... It's like he's what's that? Is it Anonymous? That guy? That what's the hacker like Anonymous that comes out and does all that? That's Wiggy. He basically finds like photos from years ago and all sorts of bits, and then he'll put it in the team meeting. And he's very good at making sure, like say the group will have a laugh around it. So I'm trying to think of some. I think we did one in the World Cup, didn't we? Where did he manage to find? He had something like Courtney from like 2008 and 9, and like some old ones of Marcus. I think he found one of 40 as when he was obviously dressed as
Mr. Incredible.
Like these fancy dress stuff. He whipped out the old driving license, I think, of you and me, Coley, when we passed our driving test, an old classic. So he's someone that will get it and then just drop it in a meeting randomly. So
I can't remember, there was someone else who he went back and found a tweet from like when Nelson Mandela died.
Yeah.
And it was like, take it easy, madam, or something, a hashtag or something like that. And I can't remember what it was, but they were about 6 years old at the time. So, he was maybe a bit older. But, like, he will find stuff and he will quite happily throw it out there in a meeting. And, all power to it. There were several of Alex Mitchell wasn't there when I think Mitch first came to the squad. He also did Danny Care's presentation and basically went through Danny Care's when Danny Care got 100 caps, he went back and basically, not say trawled through, but he found every bit of dirt on Danny Care. And it was the job he did, the detective job he did was amazing. Which actually makes me, speaking of detectives, this is the link. The forwards coach, John Dalziel, I wanted to get his name pronounced right, so I sort of Googled it, and then I realised it's the same spelling as the old BBC detective drama, Dalziel and Pascoe. You probably never watched it, you probably know what I'm on about, but if there's any listeners out there that do, I think, there could be a spin-off series for the Lions about TB Wigglesworth. Dalziel and Wigglesworth. That's what I want.
I like it. I like it. So I just think good addition, good for him, good for his coach development. I think he'll bring the group together, as I say, once we know their full roles, but I suspect that's what he'll be doing, is around that bit, or working as well with, maybe as well, he might be doing the attack, helping with the attack, of course, as well. When you think you go Wednesday, Saturday, that almost another coach out there, because Wiggy can do, he's second in command, obviously, with England. He can run an entire session. He can run an entire meeting, an entire session. So actually, maybe the other thing as well is having someone like him there, is the fact you've got the Wednesday team, the Saturday team, that actually another set of eyes, coaching, being able to present, do all these little things, could actually help manage, what will be, I'm guessing, a decent sized touring party of probably around 40 that we suspect, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I'm not going to say you'd want to run it with sort of two separate sides, but there's definitely, there's a big workload on the coaches going sort of midweek game, weekend game, with all the travel, the preview, the review, all that kind of stuff. So having more coaches that can do, have eyes on a lot of things, rather than just having the scrum coach do the scrum, one attack coach, one defence coach, have a coach that can cover multiple things, can only help in regards to what they're all seeing, what they've previewed, attack for different games and throw it in there, rather than just relying upon one coach to do their section, but every 3 days for every game. So yeah, I think it's a smart move.
It is. And Simon Easterby, mate, obviously he was the interim coach for Ireland during the Six Nations, and good to see him in there. He's obviously done defence for a long time. He's been head at Scarlets before he went to Ireland, of course. Then he's done a little bit of a role at that. So again, he's another person that's got, vast experience, knows Andy Farrell very, very well. But I suspect he will almost slot into that role of second in command behind Andy Farrell and run the defence, would be my guess.
Again, interesting. I think he's been forwards coach and defence coach at Ireland. So, he's another body that probably knows line-outs. I mean, Farrell can do defence, he can do defence. There's just more eyes, and, with DL and Easterby, if they're both sort of forwards coaches, then it gives you more options and more depth of the squad. I think it's a great thing. I think, he obviously knows he's ran the Ireland squad. He's been that head coach. So, again, he can step up and lead if needs be in midweek. There's lots of experience on that staff, and I think it's it'll be interesting how it all works and gets put together. But I think everyone who goes on that staff will know their role, will agree to it, and will want to win the test series, and they'll do what needs to be done to win, and that's the most important thing.
I think, given the dominance in terms of the Irish coaching staff in there, though, Coley, I think it will be a very much Irish system way of playing, Irish players in selection. In terms of, there's a 50-50, you're likely to go with the Irish players, and I don't blame them, because they know that system. Like, if they're going to attack the same way, if they're going to defend the same way, then it makes more sense to, if there is a 50-50 call, you're going to hedge your bets for that way, because that player knows that system. When you're trying to get all those bits done in such a short time, in terms of you're playing Wednesday, Saturday, that you're actual training ability to iron all those out shorter. So I think it will be, as we've seen before, really, when Gatland's gone in with Wales coaches, it often swings heavy towards those nations. So I suspect that there'll be heavy Irish, and even like when it comes to those tight calls, the Irish guy gets the nod, and that's fine. I actually totally get that.
Yeah, but I think those coaches. Farrell's obviously coached the Lions before, been on 2 tours. Easterby's been there as a player. I think the staff will make the right decision for, they're not going to bother which country you're from. It's about winning the test match. And yes, they'll have prior knowledge of the Irish players and trust them and back them, that kind of stuff. But ultimately, they'll pick the right team to do the job. And it'll be interesting to see which team they pick and what they're thinking when they do it. Which is hopefully what we will be able to bring in our Lions coverage over the summer. Is not so much what we do, but what they do and what they're doing and what sort of game plan and what tactics they're going for and the players they pick. And because I think, like, the more I think about the Lions, the more I think about how hard it is. I said this to you the other day. It's like, I think it must be one of the hardest things in sport to be able to get 40 men from. You got some cohesion from different players, but getting 40 blokes to come together, play, and take on a team that's been prepping for you for a year or two. And I know Australia's gone for a bit of change, but it's a real hard task. Plus, you could move it every 3 days and all that kind of stuff. And I think the ability for teams to get that cohesion as quickly as possible, tactically, and which players they pick and all that kind of stuff it's such an effort. And I think when the Lions win, it's probably underappreciated how hard it actually is. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Lions go about it and how quickly players can get on the same page and all that kind of stuff when the summer rolls around.
And not only that, Coley, another thing is you're also working with the 40 best players that are also often the best players for their country. And then they come together and they may not necessarily be the best player on that tour. And then how that dynamic works. So you've seen in the past where they select certain players on the basis that there may be more talented players somewhere else, but because they're such good tourists, because you know that they're going to almost, accepts the wrong word, but know their role and where they might sit and not cause disruption along the way and be such good tourists that, like, you know what I mean, make that midweek team their own in terms of, right, I know my job and I'll do this, and if I play great, and force in happy days, but I'm coming almost knowing what my role is, where that's also a difficult dynamic to manage as well for coaching staff.
No, my great thing, I think one of the things Warren Gatland got totally right about his teams in 2013, 2017, like, in all honesty, I don't think he's the best rugby coach in the world, but one thing he nailed was his squads and his team selections. I think everyone on that tour knew, maybe there's one or two players that knew they're literally there to start, but I think most of the players in that squad went as they had the talent to start, they come off the bench, or they could be that third choice. And I think there's some players in the world, and this is what I think a lot of media and some fans don't understand, is like, some players can start, and if they can't start, you can't have them in your squad because they'll be a pain in the arse. And just small things like in training, like, you often, the third choice will run or second or third choice will run opposition plays, opposition moves, and help prep the test team, or whatever team it is you're playing, whether it's international or club level, will help prep. You know, they'll attack as the Brumbies do, which they attack slightly differently to, say, the Reds do, but that's how those 10s will understand that role and do it. And that's, you need someone to do that, but there's some guys in the world can't do that because they're so used to starting and they don't want to do that role. So that's where the Lions, the art of that is, you pick a squad that actually the third best, say, 10 or the third best 12 might not be the technically third best player. He might not start for his country, but actually he fits that role in the squad. If you need him to start, he can do it. If you need him to bench, he can do it. But he can train in the middle of the week, play in those games in midweek, be all out energy, and be a good player. And that's, you know, I think the squads we've been in, like we learned in the 2019 World Cup, 2023 World Cups, like those blokes they kind of make the series go because they are the ones pushing the stuff in training. And yeah, and that's the art of, I think, the team selection. I think, you know, that's why obviously Farrell's probably had a year to, you know, well, not a year, but he's had 6 months or so to look at those squads and find out about players. And again, having those Wigglesworths, your DLs in your coaching staff, you'll be able to ask them those questions, like, you know, like I say, Finn Smith, you know, mention him, is like, you know, I'm sure Farrell's asking him, like, Wiggy, what's he like? Could he play? You know, he's obviously a great talented player, but will he be willing to be third choice, or will he be able to play midweek games? Will he be able to prep the test team as best as possible? And will you be able to give this clear answer and say yes or no? And similar with, you know, other positions and Marcus, is he happy playing fullback? All this kind of stuff. Can we take him on a tour? You know, I'm not saying you have the specific questions, but having those coaches like your Wigglesworth there to be able to answer them and give you that in-depth knowledge and know that the guys you're taking on tour are good, you know, yes, they're great rugby players, but they're also good tourists, because you're going to need that for the 8 weeks, 10 weeks you're together. That's just as important as having the most talented rugby team.
It's like, I got me thinking about, like, the Prendergast, and, you know, he's still very young in his international career. They're 2 years away from a World Cup. They need to almost fast track his development as a 10, because he looks like he is the 10 that they're going with. Is he could almost go on the Lions tour, and be that third choice with the obviously opportunity of pushing for further honours. But you'd say Finn Russell goes in as first, and then I believe it's between sort of a Marcus and a Finn Smith between, you know, that second slot. And I think that Prendergast comes in as that third guy that is in that role where probably a really good tourist going to drive that team, happy to run as the prep the team for the first test or whatever it might be his role. But equally, Ireland, or, you know, have got an idea that actually what an opportunity to fast track his development, because in 2 years' time they're going to World Cup and they need a 10 with more experience than he's currently got. So that's, I look at it like that, and that could be an example of what we're kind of talking about. Totally agree. Coley, let's just touch on John DL, or I like to call him John Dalziel. Just feel it's just better. I don't know much about him. You don't know much about him, so we asked a couple of teammates in Will Hurd and Cam Henderson, what is he like? So give the listeners a bit of a view, because I think up till today, no one's really seen much of him or heard much from him or knew too much about him.
When we came in from training today, I looked at my phone straight away to find out what the Lions coaching staff was. And when I mentioned to Hurdy and Cam that it was DL was picked, they were kind of not taken aback, but it sort of even caught them off guard. But then he kind of like asked them about him and said, like, no, he's a great line-out coach, very thorough in his stuff. You know, Scotland's more, he's a brilliant forwards coach. Part of me also thought that, you know, they knew I was going to say this on the pod, so for those two, they are also playing the long game in regards to saying what a great coach he is. So there might be a bit of bias there. But if he is hearing this, then yeah, Will Hurd and Cam Henson say you're a brilliant coach and they should probably pick him for Scotland more.
Very smart from them, Coley. But let's see. That's our sort of coaching staff. Let's go to an ad break. I'll tell you an interesting fact before the ad break.
Can we just mention on a different note, the squad's been announced. I did see Sean Edwards said that he would swim to Australia for the Lions. So I just did a little bit of Googling, and it turns out London to Sydney by cargo ship is 17,240 nautical miles, or basically 31,928 kilometres. That's departing from Southampton and arriving in Sydney. And by cargo ship, that takes approximately 45 days. To swim it, he probably should have set off about a month ago. So after the Six Nations is done, he might be in the ocean now. We don't know. If someone can give me an update on where he is.
Can everyone let us know where Sean is? Right, let's go to an ad break. Thriver are an official partner of the podcast. Who are Thriver, Coley?
Thriver can give you personalised blood testing to help you with better nutrition, better performance or better health. Listeners, viewers, if you want to get your blood tested, go to thriver.co and use the code LOVEOFRUGBY to get 20% off your first test.
The app is also very, very good.
Oh, yes. So the app, it gives me I've been looking at my results from previous and say the breakdown and actually learning and understand what all the tests are and what they do is it's really interesting. I say we have made, Ben, in this previous little break mini pre-season, we've made some changes to what we do. And yeah, how are you feeling? Obviously now we're back playing.
Well, I feel good, mate, especially after Friday night's little cameo. We both had little cameos, so we're feeling very good. Actually, because it's a subscription service, Coley, mine came through the post the other day, and I've done another one. So it's been sent back, super easy, and now I'm waiting for an update. So I've been at it. I've made tinkers with the feedback I got from my first test I did, especially around omega-3 and the amount of fish oils that I was lacking, let's say. So I'm looking forward to when I get those results, which should be, to be fair, any day, and see whether I've improved in those areas.
Well, I was actually inspired by your omega-3 test, because I originally didn't do it on my first set of results, but having heard that you were slightly low on your omega-3s, I've added that to my test this time round, so I've sent it off and I will be getting those results back. So, yeah, I will let you know if I'm going to join you on the fish oil crusade.
We've actually got a question from Sam Tester via our Google form. What do you eat on a daily basis to be a big boy? I'm assuming, I mean, that could be me, but I'm assuming it's you, Coley.
Well, Sam, thank you for the question. Basically, I try and build my foundation to my meals around protein, whether it's sort of eggs in the morning and a protein shake, or lunch should be some form of like chicken or beef and similar dinner. And around that, depending on what training days we have, I try and get a minimum sort of 200 grams of protein a day, which is a bit extreme, but we are very physical in what we do, and I weigh quite a lot. And depending on what training we're doing, I will introduce sort of more carbohydrates and fruits around high, heavy training days and pull them back on the recovery days. So, yeah, I'm not one of these blokes that, to be honest, needs to eat 1 million calories to stay big. If I eat 1 million calories, I get very big. So I do look after what I eat, because I know I can fluctuate or my weight can go up and then go up higher. So I have to look after that.
Coley, if I remember correctly from your first Thriver test, one of the things was you were thinking of cutting down a bit more red meat and coming off that a little bit. Have you done that? Have you noticed any improvements if you have done that?
I have done that slightly, but we will see. I will, I've tried to sort of have more chicken and fish options, especially at the club. But I do enjoy my British beef, I'm not going to lie, Ben. and I will continue to eat that, but I will eat it in moderation.
Absolutely. Well, there's a whole host of reasons to get your blood tested, to be fair, and we will continue to do it, Coley, as we track our aging bodies and try and optimise towards the back end of the season. So, yeah, there you go. So detect potential health issues before they become problems, optimise your energy levels and daily performance, track and improve your key health markers. So if you want to do that, then get yourself a blood test. Go to thriver.co and use the code LOVEOFRUGBY to get yourself 20% off your first blood test. Coley, the Women's Six Nations is well underway. Cracking win for England at the weekend. Maud Muir was awesome. Looking at Sage Insights, she actually beat 5 defenders against Italy. And Coley, I've got to say, mate, the modern day prop, because I'm not sure you've beat 5 defenders in your 20-year career.
Combined? No, I don't think I have, Ben.
Yeah.
But you know what, Ben? I'm going to take my boys out into the garden later on. I'm going to step them and run over them, and I've been inspired now. But that's the level I'm at. Yeah, no, modern day prop. They do it all, can't they? We've seen Will Stewart's dancing feet at Twickenham in the Six Nations, and now we've got Maud Muir beating 5, and Sarah Byrne dancing in front of the crowd, and everyone loving it.
Yeah, I like that. In New York, she was getting involved, doing the dance. I can tell you what, I can see what John Mitchell's trying to do. Of course, we've actually got a cracking episode coming out with him very, very soon. And he spoke on the without giving too much away, because it's a cracker, but the enjoyment he wants from this group. We played in a home World Cup, Coley, and we didn't necessarily get to enjoy the whole experience. We were sort of locked away a little bit where we were. Not that this is about us, but you can very much see that he wants them to go out there, express themselves, get engagement, and enjoy doing it. Not be daunted by the Six Nations and not be daunted by what's happening in August and September, of course, with the home World Cup, which is going to be awesome. Go out there, express yourself, enjoy, engage with the fans after, and it's awesome to see, mate. I can see exactly what he's trying to do, and I can see what they're trying to do, and the atmosphere, and I suppose the excitement they're creating and building, which is awesome to see.
Oh, definitely. I think you look at the crowd in York, the Red Roses, the engagement they have. It looks like the games look like fun places to be. I've said previously about sort of how sometimes playing in your career, the crowd can be quite quiet if the game's not particularly engaging. Whereas I think like the Red Roses, their fan base, the fans they've got in, it's very young and it's very active. And I think it adds to the team, even to the game. Sometimes watching that Italian game, there were moments where it wasn't full on, playing. There's a bit stop-starting times, but the crowd's involved. They're dancing around and they're helping the Red Roses get back on top. And I think that's great to see, especially leading into the home World Cup. And as you say, I think people are having fun. The crowd's loving it. The girls seem to be loving it. And I think it's great. And you hope that those Red Roses can enjoy this year for such a unique occasion in their lives and their sport and their careers, that building up to the World Cup, where they can actually relish and enjoy it rather than sort of fearing it in some regards.
Well, they can make it their own. They can do it whichever way they want, because, male rugby, for instance, has been traditionally, this is how it's done and this is how it's got to be, and blah-de-blah-de-blah-da. Where women's rugby and the Red Roses and the way that, new set of fans, engaging fans, the way they do it, they can write their own script with it. You know what I mean? And I think there isn't any of these stereotypical rules that maybe you have in the male game. They can do their thing. They can do and get engaged in the fans. They can put their headphones on and dance like they're doing. You can do certain celebrations. You haven't got that. I don't quite know what the word is, but you can write your own script with it. And I think that's awesome. And they can see they're embracing that. And I love that. Also Ellie Kildunn will win her 50th cap on Saturday, by the way, Coley, at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, which is a monumental effort. Of course, was World Player of the Year, proper box office. But I just like how they're enjoying it. They're going about it. They're not feeling like they've got to act in a certain way. I just love it. They're just getting engagement, and it will continue to grow. And I think there's a real opportunity to keep momentum and do all this. And you can be daunted by the fact that they haven't lost a game since the last World Cup. Losing that final against New Zealand was the last game they lost. Home World Cup, expectation, players that are essentially contracts, and all these, you can look at it everywhere and go, oh, I'm daunted by it. Or you can look and go, do you know what? We're really, really good. like, we're not going to be intimidated by it. We're going to embrace the pressure. We're going to embrace the occasion. We've got a home World Cup, and this is how we're going to do it. And the Six Nations is a stepping stone towards that, so that when it comes around to August and September, all these fans that have gone and watched, everyone that's watched on TV is totally captivated, totally engaged, feels a part of the Red Rose team, and is right behind them come the World Cup, because I just think there's an awesome opportunity there to inspire the next generation, to genuinely inspire young girls, and I've got 2 daughters, young girls, to pick up a rugby ball and go and play.
Certainly agree, Ben. And if you want to hear from Maud, Sadia and Shauna, they have a great episode that's actually out yesterday. We have a great episode out yesterday.
Coley, the comments have been flooding in after a historic East Midlands derby win last Friday. We've got a question from Russ. Dan got real mad at Northampton after a scrum on Friday night. What was up with that? Thanks for the great pod.
Well, Ross, I don't think I got really mad. I was just slightly annoyed that the opposition prop was like first scrum of the game. He was trying to basically, I think, pull a fast one and get a free kick and get Northampton possession back, and basically claimed I was leaning on him too hard in the scrum and pulled out. And I begged to differ. And yeah, he said something, I said something back. The referee then said, you can't swear. I claimed that I didn't swear, when actual evidence fully well shows that I did. But I was just using the old deny, reaccuse. And then at the end of it, I also swore. So I'd like to apologise for my swearing. I think there was actually an apology on the TV for my swearing. In fact, my kids told me off the next morning. We got home. We didn't get home till, it was like 1 o'clock I got home. I don't know how I managed it, but like 1 o'clock, and the boys came in at like 6:30 in the morning, like, oh, Daddy, you were swearing yesterday, weren't you? I was like, no. They're like, we heard you. I'm like, oh, fuck's sake. I didn't say fuck's sake, obviously. I'm bad, but I'm a good parent. So I got told off by my kids at 6:30 on Saturday morning for swearing. So I'd like to apologise for that. But, I just East Midlands derby just got the better of me. What can I say?
You're very naughty, Coley. Coley, in layman's terms, though, break it down for listeners. You're scrummaging and you say that overleaning or you're putting too much weight on. Just explain what you actually mean by that so they actually understand why you were getting annoyed.
On the bind, there's a period of the scrum before the crouch and the set where you have a bind phase. And that's basically where a lot of weight is going through your head and bind, or my arm, on the opposition. And basically it's an agreement that both teams lean on each other, but not too much and not too little. So you basically have equal forces going through you, and you're balanced on the mark. So when you do say set, both teams can come together and engage, and it's a stable scrum to put the ball in. But some teams try to get an advantage on the bind phase, so will lean loads and loads of weight on top of you, so you're almost stepping, as an opposition, you're stepping back, so when they engage, you can't recover. And other teams sort of pull a fast one where they feel weight pulling on them, that they'll almost let you put the weight on them and they'll almost pull out the scrum to get a free kick. And we at Leicester pride ourselves on our clean scrummaging. And but the referee dealt with it and it was fine. But I say that was the thing, and sometimes to say it's one of those unwritten rules into the sport of the scrummaging is basically you have to have not a gentleman's agreement, but on the bind, to get to the scrum, you have to go through the bind phase, and it requires both teams to basically equally balance on the mark, which is sometimes quite tough when you've got sort of 16 blokes and a lot of weight going through ultimately 6 people's heads and 4 people's binds.
Well, there we go. Did you see, Coley, when you watched it back, and I don't know if you did with commentary, but they actually called us Ant and Dec?
That's very kind of them to suggest such a thing. I don't know, I didn't watch it on commentary, but yeah, I'm glad that they I didn't listen to it on commentary, put it that way, but I'm glad that we recognise the duo that we've become.
We've got a question from Alex, Coley. Do the clubs and the coaches feel bad when they rest the biggest players in the big club games? I'm a Northampton fan who hasn't seen my club play in months, and that was not the ideal derby game.
Yeah, I think clubs and coaches want to play their best players all the time. There is obviously restrictions around that with the EPS, and rightly so, because it's tough for players. But it is, it's one of those things where, unfortunately, the league is so competitive that international players, I think, if they play have a certain amount of involvements in the Six Nations, get a rest week. And unfortunately, the calendar at the minute is 2 massive Premiership games. If you look at the Premiership, it's all to play for, and then you have European Cup in the 3rd week, so they've got to be resting on those weeks, and it's a question of where do you pick them, where do you rest them. So a team like Northampton, who have loads of internationals, do you either rest them all in one go, or do you sort of try and drip feed some in and some out, and it's tough. And yeah, I think the coaches, ideally they have their best players. Admittedly, there was a couple of months to prep for that game, but when you lose a load of internationals, whether you're Northampton, Leicester, it's tough. And those guys, they've been away for 2 months, to get them acclimatised back in the team as quickly as possible, it takes some planning and effort. And yeah, it's one of those things, probably in an ideal world, that you'd almost say like a rest week after the Six Nations where there's no rugby, but then all eyes are on rugby because the Six Nations is finished and you want the Premiership to go out with a bang. But as you say, like, some people get rested, some don't, and it's I don't know, maybe it's something for the league to look at, and because you want the sort of, especially this run-in, you want it all to play for, you want the best players playing, especially when the attention for England is such a great Six Nations. The attention turns to the Premiership, and you want to see the best players, especially the ones who've played for England previously, playing for their clubs, and everyone going for it. So yeah, it's unfortunately it's one of those things you have to manage, and rightly so. I'm not disagreeing that players need to be rested. You go for 2 months. International rugby is tough. It's hard. You deserve a rest week, but it's just a question of how you, the season is so stacked in regards to every week's a tough game in the Premiership that you have to rest them somewhere, and unfortunately that's what you have to do.
Yeah, and the league had to change because of when the Lions tour goes, and had to finish earlier. Next year, there's not a fallow week. One fallow week, is taken out, so there's only one. Is it better having that week off straight after Six Nations where there's no game for everyone? But as you say, Coley, rugby's got momentum at that stage, so do they play the game straight away? Or the argument is, do you need all the Derby weekend? Do you have it the first weekend after Six Nations? Maybe not. I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but yeah, it's just part of it. It's protecting player welfare, and everyone has to manage it. So it's the same for every club that has internationals that are returning.
Indeed. We've got a question from Scott here. Is it true that Ben is moving to Racing?
Thanks for the question, Scott. Well, everyone will know soon enough, but the first person that will know will be Coley.
Thank you. Can I come with you when you sign it? I love Paris.
You can come in and watch me do my medical when I get on the scales.
What I would like, I'm not saying you're going, you might not be, you might be, if you could swing me 2 tickets at La Défense Arena for whichever international pop star, rock star is playing there. We played our first game there. We played the first game, I think, when the stadium opened, and it's hell of a venue. I mean, the rugby pitch is pretty crap, but the actual venue is brilliant, and yeah, I'd really like to go see a rock concert there of some sort. So yeah, if you get me top of the list, even if you don't go, mate, if you could just use that as a bargaining tool of like, oh, I need to go to a concert there to see what it's like, and then pull out, that'd be fine by me. No,
what we need to do is say, let's do a live show in that concert. So there we are. We started with talking about the live show. We're going to end with talking about the live show. Get yourself a ticket. They're still available at certain venues, and you're in for a cracking night. So there we go, Coley. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll take the live show to Paris. If I'm going, or if I'm going, if I'm not, maybe, who knows? Everyone will know soon enough. So there we go.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back on Monday with Ant Watson when he takes on a Wingers Deep Dive. It's actually a great episode, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss that. And if you're listening on Spotify, leave us a nice little comment, please.
There's also a rumour of an incredible dance performance, so you really don't want to miss out on that. Thank you for listening. See you next week. Au revoir.
Isn't it au revoir?
Coley, that is a part of the French language I have not explored yet.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.